picture on my bag. I couldn't take it, and I controlled myself at that time. So it is very hard.
Amid mounting backlash over Trump's comments, his campaign went into damage control mode, releasing a statement calling Captain Khan, quote, a hero to our country, and saying we should honor all who have made the ultimate sacrifice to keep our country safe. Went on to say, quote, while I feel deeply for the loss of his son, Mr. Khan, who has never met me, has no right to stand in front of millions of people and claim I've never read the Constitution, which is false. Trump continued to harangue the Khans on Twitter yesterday. I was viciously attacked by Mr. Khan at the Democratic Convention. Am I not allowed to respond? Hillary voted for the Iraq War, not me. And again, this morning, this story is not about Mr. Khan, who is all over the place doing interviews, but rather radical Islamic terrorism in the U.S. Get smart! Exclamation point. In the meantime, some of Trump's allies have begun a smear campaign of baseless and vicious innuendo against the Khan family. Based on zero evidence, Breitbart now claims Khizr Khan has connections to the Saudi Arabian government, the Clinton Foundation, and terrorism, while Roger Stone, a longtime Trump advisor and confidant who is unaffiliated with the campaign formally, tweeted that Khan is, quote, a Muslim Brotherhood agent helping Hillary, linking to conspiracy theories about Sharia law infiltrating the U.S. Trump's remarks have been condemned by numerous veterans groups, including the VFW, which hosted him at its national convention last week. And in an MSNBC interview on Friday, Khizr Khan pled with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Paul Ryan to renounce their support for Donald Trump.
There comes a time in the of a nation where ethical, moral stand has to be taken, regardless of the political cost. The only reason they are not repudiating this, his behavior, his threat to our democracy, our decency, our foundation, is just because of political consequences.
McConnell and Ryan have both issued statements honoring the Khan family sacrifice and reiterating their opposition to Trump's Muslim ban. Senator John McCain, once derided by Trump for having been a prisoner of war, put out a long statement strongly condemning Trump's attacks on the Khans. Quote, while our party has bestowed upon him the nomination, it is not accompanied by unfettered license to defame those who are the best among us. But all three of these individuals have declined to take back their endorsements of Donald Trump, which are still longstanding and operable. I spoke a short time ago with Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who serves with John McCain in Arizona and has not endorsed Trump. I started him by asking him how important he thought the Muslim ban was as the genesis of all this.
Well, that's very important. And when he made that statement, I think many Americans, many Republicans were incensed by it. That's when I went actually to a mosque that week here in Arizona and spoke about the contributions that Muslim Americans have made throughout the history of our country. They fought in every war. They've been first responders to many of these terrorist attacks. And this notion that we ought to have a religious test for people entering the country is just the antithesis of who we are as Americans. So I do think that that's at the root of this, and that's what incensed the Khans so much.
You use the phrase antithesis of who we are as Americans, and I can't help but notice that your friend, your colleague, your fellow senator in Arizona, John McCain, who's up for re-election, who is personally insulted by Donald Trump way back at the beginning of this, who put out a very strong statement condemning his Trump's words about Mr. Khan, is nonetheless supporting Donald Trump. Is there a breaking point for your colleagues at which point they feel that they can no longer abide this?
Well, I don't want to speak for any of my colleagues. I can just say John McCain is a good man, and to stand by the Republican nominee, I think it's largely because he was that nominee 8 years ago, and he feels that it's his duty, and I respect that. But I think some of us need to push back on these statements made by Donald Trump. I think for the good of the party, for the good of the country, we need to, because somebody making these kind of statements shouldn't become president, and I hope that he changes.
Respectfully, sir, though, and I understand you don't want to speak for your colleague John McCain, but just as a general principle here, it does seem to me that perhaps one's duty to one's party and some other moral commitments that a politician might have seem to be in conflict. At a certain point, I think we can all agree there are certain things that, say, a nominee of the party you support would say or support that would be out past what you could, in good conscience, continue to support. What is that line? If it has not been crossed yet, what could conceivably be the line that would cross that?
Like I said, I don't want to speak for anyone else. I think that the Muslim ban for me was one of those lines, his criticism of John McCain, and then some of the positions that he's taken, not just the tone and the tenor of the campaign, but the positions on immigration, for example. Just saying we're going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. We in Arizona need meaningful immigration reform. The statements made about NATO and our security arrangement with the European countries, we can't have that position and move ahead. So it's not just the tone and tenor of the campaign, it's the positions that he's taken. And for me, he's gone beyond, and like I said, but many Republicans, I respect those who say, I'm going to support the nominee. We hope that he changes. We have 100 days or 99 days left. It's increasingly unlikely, in my view, that he's going to change some of these positions, but I hope he does.
But sir, I mean, at a certain point, what's the line from Einstein about insanity doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? I mean, we've all been observing this for now over a year. I mean, we know, whether you like him or not, who this individual is. I mean, isn't that just people lying to themselves when they say he might change?
Well, hope springs eternal, and we have some time left, and he chose a good running mate. Mike Pence is a good man. I hope that he's able to move him and move Donald Trump on some of these positions. But when he continues to make statements like he did about the cons, it becomes increasingly unlikely that he is going to change, and I think that's too bad for us.
Finally, can I ask you, Senator, who you'll be voting for president this fall?
Well, I've said again and again I will not vote for Hillary Clinton. I know too much about her record. And I do think that some Republicans go far too far saying, oh, she ought to be locked up, because when you say that, it doesn't allow us to actually have the real debate on a number of topics that we ought to be having a debate on. But like I said, I can't vote for Donald Trump given the things that he said. I hope he changes. I still want to support our nominee. We'll see who else is on the ballot.
All right. You can always write in Jeff Flake, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joining me now, Congressman Charlie Dent, Republican from Pennsylvania. Congressman, you tweeted this today. Captain Con was a hero who gave his life for the U.S. Anyone diminishing his valor or the loss felt by his mother and father should be condemned. Who do you mean by anyone?
Well, look, I very much disagree with the comments of Donald Trump with respect to the cons. You know, as a member of the Republican Party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, I often look to Abraham Lincoln at a time like this. I've been to many funerals, too many funerals, sadly, of service members who died in Afghanistan or Iraq. And I always go to Abraham Lincoln, who always said these individuals gave that last full measure of devotion. And so to criticize a family, a Gold Star family that lost a loved one in the line of duty is just beyond the pale. It's out of bounds, and that kind of comment is indefensible, and it has to be condemned.
And then what? I mean, have you decided on who you're supporting in this presidential election yet?
Well, I have not endorsed the nominee, and I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton. I said I'd never support Hillary, and I've not endorsed the nominee, and that's where I am, and that's where I continue to be. As I've been on your show before and some other shows, I've stated that given all of the incendiary comments from the POWs and John McCain to the disabled, to Mexicans, to women, to the Muslim comments, to David Duke, to the Indiana judge, and now the Con family, that has given me a lot of pause, as well as the policy contradictions. You know, we're also talking about Russia right now, too, and Ukraine and Crimea. And these policy contradictions and lack of specifics are also very troubling to me, and that's why I have not endorsed.
Why are there not more people like you, Congressman? Why have the overwhelming majority of your colleagues endorsed, despite the fact that I'd be willing to bet that behind closed doors, the vast majority of them speak about him in similar terms to the way that you're speaking about him now in public?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. Let me tell you, I've spent a lot of time in Congress now. I'm in my 12th year, and I've taken a lot of grief from some people saying that I am not sufficiently doctrinaire, I'm not pure enough, and I don't meet all the litmus test criteria. But at the same time, some of those very same folks who are always trying to impose a purity test or a litmus test are the first ones then to endorse a populist nominee, who is not ideologically doctrinaire. So I really don't understand how, the same groups that were always criticizing folks like me and others for not being pure enough are quite happy to jump on board of a populist campaign that is anything but ideologically doctrinaire.
What does that say to you about what the actual ideological core of the modern Republican Party is then? What is it?
Well,
Why are they willing to go along?
Well, because I think one thing Donald Trump has done that I think we should take note of is that he's kind of pulled back the curtain, so to speak,
Sure has.
on the Republican primary voter. He's pulled it back, and what he's divulged is that many Republican primary voters are not, in fact, ideologically doctrinaire. They're not getting up every day reading maybe National Review, or they're not maybe fit that Ted Cruz profile. They're not, and that they might be somewhat conservative. They're conservative on some issues and less so on others. And so he's pointed that out, and I think that's actually been helpful.
Yeah.
But the way he's gone about it, I think, is really what's caused me a lot of concern.
All right, Congressman Charlie Dent, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Joined now by Sarah Iskar Flores, former deputy campaign manager for Carly Fiorina, and MSNBC political analyst Michael Steele, former chairman of the RNC. Two updates. One is that Trump in his latest event basically indicated that he thought Khan was opposed to him because he's, quote, trying to keep Muslim terrorists out of the country. That was his objection. And I want to play for you this sort of remarkable moment, I thought, at a Pence event today in Carson City, Nevada. Take a listen.
I am a military mom. My son is currently serving in the U.S. Air Force.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
My question for you, Mr. Pence, is time and time again, Trump has disrespected our nation's armed forces and veterans, and his disrespect for Mr. Khan and his family is just an example of that. Will there ever be a point in time when you're able to look at Trump in the eye and tell him enough is enough?
It's okay. It's
You
okay.
have a son in the military.
It's okay.
How do you tolerate his disrespect?
Well, I thank you for the question. It's all right. It's all right. Folks, that's what freedom looks like, and that's what freedom sounds like.
Michael, your reaction to that?
Well, I think it's a very powerful moment, and I would love to have heard the rest of what Mike Pence had to say on that point, because I think he is trying to, maybe quietly get Donald Trump off of this. Donald Trump opened up a can of worms that was so unnecessary to open up. The first part of the statement they put out today was all they should have ever said was, we thank this Gold Star family for their sacrifice and their service to our nation, period. Do not engage, do not take on, do not go down that road, because there is no win here. And the fact that people in the audience were booing this mother of a soldier, again, sends the message out that the campaign is intolerant and not respectful of those who are making this sacrifice. And I just think it's an ugly can of worms that they do not need to get into. Get off of this now, move on to talk about the economy, 1.5% growth that's been reported as of Friday.
Or the Muslim ban.
Hillary Clinton, the Muslim ban, and all of that stuff is not part of the conversation.
Well, but it is. I mean, Sarah, see, here, I want to make this point because I think it's important here to sort of separate out policy from decency, right? So let's just be clear, there are thousands of families in this country that have lost loved ones dear to them in the various wars we've been fighting now for 15 years. Some of them are Trump supporters. Some of them are Ted Cruz supporters. Some are Bernie Sanders supporters. They have every conceivable view on war and peace and on every policy issue. Right. And there's no Trump card, not to invoke a pun, because one of those families has it. So let's just put that aside. The issue here to me just seems this fundamental one of decency, that he keeps failing this just basic, take all ideology aside, just comport yourself as a decent human being in the public sphere. That's the test.
I think that's right. And look, from a political standpoint, they came out of the DNC convention. We knew that Hillary would get some kind of bump out of that. The best way to tamp that down was to, again, make this a referendum on Hillary Clinton. Look at her Chris Wallace interview yesterday on Fox News. Yep. She, even the Washington Post gave her 4 Pinocchios for her statement that Comey said she had been completely truthful to the American people. If you look up the definition of political malpractice, it has changed today. All it says is, look at the last 72 hours. It's unbelievable that we are still talking about this. And again, to your point, set aside the morality, the decency of it. Just politically speaking, what in the world are we doing here?
And this, I mean, he's proven himself. This is something that he does consistently. My question, Michael, is, I guess we're just going to do this for the next 100 days. He's going to do things that people find odious, that I'm sure people behind off the record say to you, because they fundamentally have some actual continually beating heart of decency in their own chests. They find odious and repellent, and they're going to tell you at the bar afterwards, and then just keep putting on a happy face in public. Is that the sort of game for the next 3 months?
It may be for a lot of people, but I think that there's a significant number of us out here who have been trying to sort of help steer this thing away from what has become the thing it's stuck in, and that's Donald Trump's personal peeve. He takes these comments personally and feels he needs to respond. And that's not the way this works out. This, let people express what they want to express. You don't have to respond to everything that's said to you or about you. There are central focuses that he needs to have right now: the economy and Hillary. Period. There is no other discussion that the country wants to have right now.
Yeah, well, good luck. Sarah Iskar, Flores, and Michael Steele, thank you both. Appreciate it.
We try.
Still to come, is Donald Trump thinking of skipping the presidential debates? His bizarre complaints about the schedule and what it might signal ahead. But first, Donald Trump's authoritative claim that Putin will not go into Ukraine. And there's just one small but glaring factual problem with that, and I'll explain after this 2-minute break.